Good afternoon to my ward family. I just wanted to get a quick message out before the start of the weekend. I've received a few questions from people regarding when we are going to begin having in-person sacrament meetings. I know there are many of you that are anxious to get back to church, to pray and to sing and to worship together. I also know that there are many of you that are anxious about returning to church in light of the pandemic that we are experiencing in the world. Let me shed some light on what is happening in the ward right now. We've received reopening guidelines from Salt Lake City in conjunction with our local area authorities. And we're instructed as a ward council to come up with a plan to begin having sacrament meetings following those guidelines. Once we had our plan down in writing, we would submit it to the area authorities and they would approve the plan. The leadership of our church has our safety and health at the very center of all of these reopening efforts, and they just want to make sure that what we are doing here in Glens Falls is not going to put anyone in danger or get in the way of the government's efforts to keep COVID-19 from being transmitted to those who are most vulnerable. So, the Relief Society leadership, the Elders Quorum leadership, the Young Women's president, the primary leaders, and the bishopric all got together and put our heads together and came up with what we thought was a superb plan for reopening. We submitted the plan, and it was almost approved. There were a few items that needed to be added and others that needed to be tweaked just a little bit. We made the changes and are currently awaiting approval from our area authority, whose name is Elder Clay. Once we have received approval from Elder Clay, there will be a test run where the ward council will have a sacrament meeting following our guideline-filled plan, just to make sure that everything runs smoothly before we reopen up to the whole ward and the community. So, as you can probably guess, there will be no sacrament meeting this Sunday in 2 days. If we get approval this next week, we will likely have our test run on the 26th of July. And then, if everything goes smoothly in that test run, general sacrament meetings will begin on August 2nd. If there are any changes, I will of course keep you all in the loop. Now, this past Wednesday, I was with the youth of our ward in our building on Rockwell Road. We were getting the chapel all ready for the sacrament meetings that we're going to be having in the near future. We put up signs instructing the public that we are practicing physical distancing, wearing face coverings, and to please stay home if you feel sick. We also marked up the seating with thick white duct tape so that those of the same household can easily find a place to sit that is 6 feet apart from others in the chapel. After our decorating activities, we spread out all over the chapel and had a short discussion about how we thought these new measures would be received by the ward. We also discussed how we felt about this current situation in general. One of the young men spoke up and voiced a very strong opinion. He wondered why any of these measures are even being put into place when the risk of transmission of the disease is still at large. He was very articulate in that he knew, as a young person, that he had very little risk of being in mortal danger from COVID-19. But the thought of possibly contracting the virus and passing it on to someone who is vulnerable did not sit well with him. He wasn't so much concerned for himself, but for others. And considering the information that is being reported, he did not share any excitement to start up meetings with the general public at this time. My heart goes out to this young man. My bet is that his concerns are shared by many of the ward. This is a very uncertain time for all of us. There is so much variability in what is being reported. Even the experts disagree with each other. And much of the disagreement is right down political lines, which makes it especially hard to navigate to the truth. None of us wants to accidentally transmit a dangerous virus to someone that is vulnerable. And we do have a handful of members in our ward who are in the category of being especially at risk of becoming severely ill or even dying if they contract COVID-19. So, what do we do? When we are confused by what we see in the world and have questions about how to navigate through difficult waters, we have been taught to turn to the Lord. We pray for guidance. We study the scriptures and look for His voice hinting at what we should do. And we follow the prophet. Please forgive my rusty voice as I sing the last verse of the age-old primary song. Now we have a world where people are confused. If you don't believe it, go and watch the news. We can get direction all along our way. If we heed the prophets, follow what they say. Now, giving a shout out to this week's Come Follow Me reading, I believe the message in those words, to follow the prophet, to be a good seed. When I have followed the words of the Lord's chosen vessels, I have felt the swelling motions enlarge my soul. Their words and teachings have enlightened my understanding. And now, I can honestly say that following the prophet has become delicious to me. I don't know everything, and I still have to exercise faith in so many principles of the gospel. But I can say that I do know that following the prophet is a good thing. If you remember, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints was one of the first worldwide organizations to completely shut down when news of the pandemic was emerging. President Nelson told all of us in General Conference that these measures would be temporary and that we would return to church when the Lord gave the word that it was safe. We have followed the prophet and stayed shut down this entire time. Now, the prophet is telling us that it is safe to come back to church, but only if we follow certain guidelines. He has also said that those who do not feel safe may stay home without having to feel any amount of guilt or worry about not coming to the church building. I have absolute faith that if we follow the prophet's instructions closely, that we will keep the most vulnerable members of our ward family safe and healthy. There is no need to fear when we are following the prophet. Brothers and sisters, please contact me or any member of the ward council if you have any questions regarding these reopening measures, any of the reopening measures at all. We will be keeping you updated at all times. Thank you so much for your patience and prayers, and I hope to see you soon. Ah!